Hello, listener and viewer. I'm Ainsley. Welcome back to episode 3 of More Cowbell. We interview Ian Eskelin. He is one of my older friends in this town. He is a 4-time Dove winner, producer of the year, 2 of those. So he knows what he's doing. He's a great songwriter and producer. We've had several #1 radio hits together, and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with him, as I will say in the episode multiple times. So sit back and enjoy. This is a good one.
Oh, no. Good job. Does that commence the podcast?
That is like, let's get the show started.
Okay, got it.
Call to order. Ian, thanks for doing this, man. You won't regret it.
I will beat you up later. It'll be fantastic.
Ian is one of my best buddies, actually, and I've worked with him for since 2010, maybe. Ian's been in the music business in this town since the 90s. And has been an artist. He's a producer. He's a prolific songwriter. One of the most instantaneous, quick songwriters I've seen or heard, and can come up with a million pieces of inspiration very quickly. So I am super honored that he agreed to do this, and hopefully he won't regret it.
Glad to be here. Actually, glad you're here at the Holiday Ian. So is the name of the studio, the Holiday Ian.
I noticed that starting to appear, because last night I actually looked you up on AllMusic, because I'm like, I need to find out what he's done.
A lot of Ian's credits include Crystal Meyer, Stellar Kart, Hawk Nelson, Francesca Battistelli. He was in a band called All Star United, which I thoroughly enjoyed before I even met Ian, so that was fun. And so here we are. We still work on a whole bunch of stuff now, all kinds of things. We're working on right now Indian worship stuff, which I thoroughly enjoy, having been spent a few years of my life in India in my childhood. So how did you ever get to the point where you thought, I'm moving to Nashville and doing music? Start from the beginning and get me up to you moving to Nashville.
So I grew up in a small town in Missouri called Springfield, Missouri, and I was always interested in music. I feel like I was hit over the head by the Holy Spirit at a young age with a crazy sense of melody. I remember standing in front of my mirror as a 12-year-old kid, air guitaring and singing, and wondering what it would be like to be on stage. And so my early years and formative years in music were, starting terrible garage bands and learning basic instruments and trying to understand what synthesizers were and things like that. And just horrible bands, but lots of growth. Then our family moved from Missouri to Charlotte, North Carolina when I was after my freshman year in high school.
Okay.
And so that was a complete scene change for me, going from a small town to a bigger city. And I kind of got to reinvent myself a little bit, which was great. And so I really kind of dug into this kind of music situation. And so I started some other bands, and I was an early adopter of early synth-pop music. So I was the geek in the bedroom and in the garage, tinkering around on all the early synths and sequencers. And it was just early MIDI days. Cables were going everywhere. Now we just plug one cable and it's all easy. I'm not sure people appreciate how difficult those days were back in the day. It was like a snake pit underneath my desk of cables going everywhere to keyboards and synths I didn't know how to use, and programs that were, so basic.
on early computers, right?
Oh my goodness! It
was
just
like
funny.
What did you have? Ataris, Macs, like what?
Totally. My first, my first thing was those old. It was a Alesis MMT. Well, before that, it was like a TR-707 and like a reel-to-reel machine that we would just like put on a stand in the middle of the stage.
And you're still in high school doing that?
Oh yeah, totally.
Wow, you really got early.
We were super early, but we would press play and put this reel-to-reel on the middle of the stage, and then we'd all play keyboards around it, and people would laugh at us, and some people liked it, but it was a good learning experience. And so I graduated high school in the band that I was playing in. They ended up pursuing it a little bit further, but that really wasn't my calling. I ended up going to Wheaton College, kind of like, I wouldn't say a whim, but I didn't know much about Wheaton College, but I was a soccer player in high school, and I had an opportunity to go play, and I ended up playing soccer at Wheaton College. And
on a scholarship?
No, they don't give scholarships at Wheaton College, but I was like, I was okay, let's go freeze in Chicago for 4 years. Why not? I went there and loved my time there. But I also still had that urgency to create music and create content. And so hence, as a young guy, you continue to start bands and do these things. And then when I graduated, and a guy named John Thompson, who was in town, he's been an A&R guy. He's done all kinds of things ever since he moved on from that time in Wheaton. But I walked into his shop one day, and he had all these cassettes and demos of all these independent Christian music artists all over the country. And I didn't really know a lot about Christian music. I was a Christian, but I didn't realize that there were all these on-the-edge artists doing similar things that I was doing. And so he kind of introduced me to a guy named Barry Blaze from a band called Code of Ethics.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember those guys? What a fun, cool. I remember thinking that was so cool that there were some Christian guys doing electronic synth music. I think they were out of Florida. Anyway, my senior year of college, I remember flying out on the weekends and moonlighting, playing keyboards for Barry and his crack team of Christian rock stars. So that was a lot of fun. Ended up graduating. That little stint with Code of Ethics led to a hilarious, fun stint filling in for the band Newsboys during that Not Ashamed tour. So I ended up playing keyboards on several months of that tour, which was really, really fun. I learned a lot about what it took to be an early road dog. I mean, those guys were absolutely crushing it and hitting it hard for 100 people a night back in the day. And so, but that led to me doing my first solo album, an album which I hope you never hear. And I hope it's not on Spotify right now.
I did not find that one.
Good. Oh, thank you, Lord. It was called Ian Eskelin. And I think the name of the album was Brand New Language. But the funny thing about that album was I really didn't know what I was doing. I kind of had a little bit of, understanding, but I'd never made a full album by myself. I remember pretty much locking myself in a studio for a month way back in the day in Elgin, Illinois. I had graduated college and I said, okay, let's make an album. Wrote every song myself, produced it, didn't know what I was doing.
So this is like just a reel-to-reel.
This is 24-track 2-inch. I think it was one of those early deals where like I could go make this project and then if somebody took a liking to it, I might get a distribution deal with a division of a division of a division of Word or something, which is actually what happened. This is back in like 92. It started a whole annual process that ended up being over a decade of my life, which I look back on with the fondest of memories and the most amazing education I think I've ever had in the music industry and music ministry too. It's like back in the day, we wouldn't write 100 songs or 150 songs like I've been known to do some years now for artists, and you're pitching songs and you're working on albums. Back then, we would write 10 songs. You would go write 10 songs. You would record them, and then you'd go on the road for an entire year. And so that's what I did. And then typically what would happen after that year, I would get dropped. I like to say I've been dropped by every record label in town multiple times, which I think is hilarious. It created in me a kind of resilience, the idea of not wanting to ever give up. I didn't move here with a plan B. I moved here and lived in my van down by the river. Literally, actually lived down by the river.
Right?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Oh, that's excellent.
Not for very long, but it did happen. I would write 10 songs, make an album, go on the road, and then God would have a different plan, and there would have to be another situation. And so I remember after my first solo album, I ended up getting dropped. And then, all right, Lord, what am I going to do next? And I ended up doing some crazy showcase back at the old Gospel Music Association that the GMA would have those GMA week.
Yeah, that's right. That was a big thing.
Yeah, it was cool. And we would go and see all these bands and make lots of friends and meet people from all over the world. And
how'd you feel when you get dropped? Did you feel crushed at the time?
Not really at the time, because I realized after being out on the road that there's tons of opportunity. I keep saying back then, but the reality is today there's so many different opportunities. You hold all the keys in your hands to do all kinds of things. We can talk about that later, but I wasn't crushed because even early on I had this concept of when I would write a song, I would put my best effort into it, pray about it, get it done to the best of my ability, and then write it off as dead and move on to the next song, right? Because there's only so much you can do with the content that you create. The reality is most of the situation is in God's hand. What's going to happen to that song next?
Right.
So I just said, all right, I'm going to keep creating content. go, 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 go. And so I did that for about a decade. And then I did my second album. And I remember slightly being embarrassed by this because they didn't want to use my last name on this album. I think it was a record for Reunion Records. It wasn't Ian Eskelin, it was Ian. So all of a sudden I was like Madonna. It's just super awkward.
He says if you take Christ out of Christian, all you're left with is Ian. And Ian's a great guy, but he's not going to save you from your sins.
Boo. Boo. Again, started that process of here's a new album. All of a sudden I am Ian with a song that kind of started to work at radio. And that was my first real try at radio. And next thing I know, I was on the road for a year opening for, when I say opening, you're doing 4 songs in front of Steve Taylor and Newsboys.
Wow.
On a tour. And so that was a great education for me about
I can only imagine
what you could get away with. And, I remember Steve Taylor actually, just a unique, amazing artist and songwriter and lyricist. And I remember sitting back every night thinking about what you could actually get away with writing lyric. And it definitely changed how I moved forward, because after that tour, I remember moving away from the solo thing and immediately started a band.
So what size crowds were you playing to that night?
That would probably be like anywhere from 300-400 to 1,200 maybe.
Okay.
Maybe, I think.
Right.
I think, that was a long time ago. My mind would be blown every night like, oh, okay, wow. I don't have to play just in this little box. I can be a little bit more daring with the lyric. And so that spawned in me like this whole concept of breaking out of my mold and writing some social commentary with a little bit of sarcasm in it, which turned into a band called All Star United, which totally changed the whole trajectory of what I was doing touring. And all of a sudden, I was no longer a guy by myself on stage pressing play on an old DAT machine. Remember that?
Is that right?
Oh my goodness, I'd go up there and press play.
Were you playing along? Or were
well,
you
my
just...
manager back in the day, like he didn't even really play. He would just fake the keyboards and press play. Oh my goodness, I remember being a solo artist on my first tours, and we played some show. I think it was in Tampa or something. And I was a young kid, and all of a sudden, it's like they had this big veil up on the stage, and they made this grand introduction, and the intro track started rolling, and all of a sudden we pressed play, and the curtain dropped, and there's this crowd out there, and there's just me on stage with a keyboard player. It was really funny, but
So you're standing there with a microphone.
Oh, of course, yeah,
No keyboard. Wow.
So I learned early on. It's like, man, I'm trying to capture these audience, desperately trying to gain their attention and have these songs that, some of the songs were mediocre at best. I might have a couple great songs, and, I'm just trying to learn how to connect with an audience and capture their attention, and which I look back on today and go, okay, those were the early days of me learning how to be a producer and a songwriter for other people, because I know what it's like to stand on a stage and have the song go down in misery.
Right. Because you're definitely a guy who gets in. Like, you don't make the audience wait to get to the good. You get it. Get it. You're at the chorus in 30 seconds.
Yeah, totally. Well, I definitely want to talk about that in a minute, because that is part of the way I write and produce. And you've opened up a whole, history in my brain here that you're making me think about stuff I hadn't thought about in a long time. All of a sudden, I wasn't the only guy on stage, and a band was really freeing for me, because I didn't have to do everything, and I didn't have to carry all the weight. And so all of a sudden, I had, background vocal guys, and all of a sudden I had like guys playing guitar, and it just really freed me up as a songwriter, and it freed me up as an artist and a performer as well. Long story short, All Star United was so much fun, and I got to do some really funny, great stuff with, I called it Christian social commentary with a bit of sarcasm. I got to poke some fun a little bit. At the heart of it, it was truly about like biblical truth and how to like tell people about Jesus in a new, cool, fun way. And like all good things, that kind of came to its end, and God had a different plan for me, and I started writing songs, and that was an interesting time for me, learning the actual craft of serious commercial songwriting. After the days of All Star United and touring came to an end, I found myself in Nashville, newly married, thinking to myself, well, goodness me, what am I going to do next, Lord? Okay.
Yeah. So how did that transition happen? Like, did somebody see you as somebody that should be tapped?
So I got married. I met my wife, Peggy, New Year's Day 2000 at a Bible study right outside New York City, which was fantastic. It was, right after Y2K. I thought if the world was going to blow up at Y2K, I was going to be there. So I was there when the ball dropped. The next day I went to a Bible study and met my wife. Married nine months later. And the next thing I know, I am in Nashville, 30 years old, with 2 years of residual touring on the books that I have to finish out, thinking to myself, this is no longer, it was never a game. I took it very seriously, but I was running, a crazy expensive touring company with a tour bus and a semi-truck and 9 guys on the road shooting pyro every night in churches, probably illegally.
Wow.
We don't want to get into that, but, making $200 a week because I put everything into the machine. And that was my whole thing. I never even thought about anything else. And so then all of a sudden when you're a husband and you're like, okay, I have some different responsibilities and here we go. All right, Lord, what do you have for me? Next thing I know, through a bizarre series of sequences, I ended up writing 3 country songs just by watching CMT Music Television for 2 weeks and learning and trying to figure it out. I don't recommend anybody doing this, but I got a credit card and made some demos back in the day. Just said, okay, let's try it. And God opened some crazy doors for me. I ended up signing a country music publishing deal back in the day with a company in Nashville called BMG, where I proceeded to have the most amazing songwriting education for 3 years. I was surrounded by all these like monsters who are like big names now as writers. And I proceeded to get 0 cuts in my 3 years, country cuts, right?
Oh, right.
I'd get these holds on records. I think this is going to be it. And like nothing, right? But what happened to me during that time was learning what it takes to be an actual professional songwriter. No longer could you just write 10 songs. I mean, I was writing 100, 150, 200 songs a year. And I look back now and I go, okay, that wasn't wasted. Nothing in God's economy is wasted. I look back and go, all right, that was like going to the gym and learning how to exercise and learning how to build your craft and build your muscles and all that. So that was really, really great. And so the next thing that happened after that stint was God opened a really interesting door for me to walk into a company called Brentwood Benson Music Publishing. And that's where, after 3 years of writing country, I got completely reinvigorated and reignited to just dive deep into Christian music. And so I definitely credit that whole team at Brentwood Benson for helping.
Were there people you met and relationships that you fostered that made those things happen or brought those things about?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, a buddy of mine named Marty Wheeler, I remember seeing him at a diner in Franklin, Tennessee, just after my situation with BMG was over. And he said, hey, man, I haven't seen you in a while. And I didn't know him extremely well, but well enough to know that we'd been in the industry together. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm thinking about signing this publishing deal out in Los Angeles. I'm going to go write some pop music maybe. And he basically said, don't sign that deal. Come see me tomorrow. Oh. It turned into a crazy ride at a company called Brentwood Benson, which I equate with turning me into a better Christian songwriter and the early days of me understanding what it means to be a producer. Because before that, I was producing, but I didn't know I was producing. I look back and I go, all those early records I did as a solo artist and even the All-Star United stuff, like I can't believe that the record labels were letting me produce them. I didn't know any better.
So they didn't hire a producer for you. You just made them.
I just went in my room and like just started creating stuff. And then I look back and I go, what an unbelievable education that was, because that's not a story I hear a lot. So I look back and I go, oh, I got to make all those mistakes on someone else's dime, and learn what not to do. And so I think that definitely plays into how I approach things now, learning what not to do.
So you become a writer at Brentwood Benson, and you start to get cuts in CCM land?
I do. I start to get some. What starts happening is I start writing these songs, and next thing I know, my demos start to get better, and my demos start to sound like exciting for some artists and for some labels. And the next thing I know, some of my demos start sounding better than, well, I think, which is not always the case. I think they start sounding better than the final product. And I'm like, goodness me, maybe I could do this. There was a guy who I'd known through the years, Robert Beeson, who used to be at Essential
Yeah,
records.
I know Robert.
He started giving some records to me, and that was great. Like you'd mentioned early on, Crystal Meyer, some of those early punk rock, fun pop records. They were so good. Another open door for something else. The next thing I know, I get a call from a guy named Otto Price, who was at Word Records, and he had this crazy punk rock band called Stellar Kart. I didn't know these guys. They've since turned into be great fun friends. But the lead singer of that band, Adam, who is now actually in Newsboys.
Right.
Isn't it funny how all this stuff comes full circle?
Mm-hmm.
But, they would just, say, all right, go into the studio and write a bunch of crazy songs. And the next thing you know, that started to have legs and that took off and that band had a great fun run. And then all of a sudden after that, I got a phone call from a great, smart record label businesswoman and A&R person, Susan Riley, who had worked with a lot of great artists who I'd loved, said she had found this artist named Francesca Battistelli. And to my ears, she only had one song. It was a song called Free to Be Me. And I think Francesca was probably 20 or 21 when she wrote that song. And it was a piano vocal. All right, Ian, do you have any thoughts or vision for this? And immediately I thought to myself, goodness me, Francesca Battistelli can sing anything. That started this snowball down a hill that all of a sudden we just started writing some songs together. I look back on that first record we did of hers. There was a song called I'm Letting Go, which was one of the early songs we wrote with. It was me, Francesca, and a great writer named Tony Wood. So we write this song called I'm Letting Go, one of the first songs we had written for her. It was fun for me because I got to just dream up. Not me, but we all got to dream up what it would be like, what her sound would be like. And some of those early vocals that she did on songs like I'm Letting Go, I think that song was up for Song of the Year. It was literally her one-take demo vocal. Like, no edits, right? So that's how good she is. I mean, she's amazing. So I look back on that now and I laugh because it's been, well over a decade since she started going. And she's got many, many kids later and a great husband. And I look back and I go, man, I've produced and written a bunch of songs for her, but I've produced over 100 songs for her now.
Wow.
And I'm very thankful for that relationship.
Okay. Would you say, she's been your high water mark?
I would say,
well, there's been a couple of others.
There's a bunch of artists I've worked with, and you've mixed a lot of these things. Sidewalk Prophets, a good friend of mine, and supreme talent, Chris August. I was thankful to work on some of his records. Just a lot of artists. I mean, you could go out in the hall, and I call it the Wall of Shame. But
we're going to do a little walk around there.
Yeah, well, you'll see all the crooked frames out there. But
well, this is the hallway at the entry of Ian's studio. You can see all of his writer awards and stuff like that, and the various. I like this one here, Seventh Time Down was the #1 single. All of his Francescas and Radiate, that was fun. I remember that. Chris August,
and of course,
Avalon.
Of course, on the toilet there's the.
There's a few doves right there,
You
and
have to go in the bathroom because
coffee.
The reality is the acronym for Producer of the Year is. POTY, the potty.
Producer of the Year. There you go.
I hang on to that stuff loosely. It's just fun to look at the history. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of artists that I've been thankful to work with, and the thing I love about Christian music is that the only thing that makes it Christian is the lyric. So I never get bored in my job because I get to dance around genres a lot. And you've mixed a lot of songs.
Oh yeah,
they're all over the place. So I've done everything from punk rock, you mentioned Hawk Nelson, the Stellar Kart stuff, but everything from Veggie Tales to Francesca, an Avalon record, a Point of Grace record, worship records, records in different languages.
So you've had this success as a producer, and writing, and you've had fun discovering what you can do. By the way, I have to use the band name Devo because when I get tracks that are Devo inspired, it makes me very happy. Ian will just program it all on his keyboards and send me this thing with a couple of vocals on it, and I just laugh because it's so not like anything else you get in CCM, which makes me very happy.
Anyway. Well, Pro Tools has a red button. You just press it, and then there's an edit button, so you just press the edit button, and then it's done.
It's that easy.
It's that easy.
Yeah. You've got to that point, and then you decide to expand and do some other things, take control of some of your life.
I've been in town a long time, and I'm thankful to have stayed busy and thankful that I get to get up every day and make music and create sounds. And it's just It's just been great. At some point in your career, you go, okay, is there another roadmap to exactly how you were doing things? For 20 years in this town, the way I made a living was you would go get a songwriting publishing deal, which basically means a publisher partners with you to own a portion of your copyright, and they give you a small advance for that. And you have a quota of how many songs you have to write every year. I never had a problem with meeting the quota because I would just write every day and completely fulfill that quota early on. That's how you make a living. And then you basically, if you had a success, I like to say that if I wrote 100 songs, I might have 2 or 3 that paid my mortgage, but you had to just keep doing it. And so I thought, okay, maybe there's another way than, going out, finding an artist, taking them to a record label, write a bunch of songs for them. And if you write 1 or 2 songs that might work, then maybe you might get to produce this album with this fun artist you found and took to the label. And I thought, okay, that's been great, but maybe there's a different way for me, especially with the new technology and the new media and streaming services and all this crazy stuff that we're all deep within now. And so I started just in name only. I hesitate to even call it a record label. I started a little name brand called Radiate Music, which was really like a rock and roll co-op for me to be the 5th band member of any artist that wanted to come along and partner with. So I would help them create their content, get the production done, write the songs. And that way, instead of writing and then waiting a year to put an album out, we could literally write a song and put it out within 3 days. Yeah, we could literally be up overnight and they'd be off to the races. That's a different marketing plan than what a record label has. They have to think about radio and they think about tours and all this, but the new landscape really is you have all the keys in your pocket right now. I liken it to independent guys are riding around on jet skis with the same lasers and ammunition that the big record labels in their battleships have. Right. We can turn a lot faster, Yeah. So nothing against record labels. I still work with them all the time, but certain artists don't fit that model. One artist in particular, a group called Attaboy that I work with, I've been working with them for years. They're amazing, but their whole ministry is school ministry, public school ministry. So they don't work on a Christian label because they can't write that Christian content because they have to be concerned about what they're going to say at a public school function. But at the same time, they have a positive Christian message that they're getting out. So their content still has to be Christian. So they're in this weird gray area that it doesn't work for label X, but it doesn't really work for the mainstream either. So why should that band not have an outlet? This Radiate Music thing has allowed me to kind of work with some artists that might not have a similar way forward. And one of those artists is an artist named Natasha Owens, who is one of my favorite artists to work with. I think I've done like 5 albums for her now. She's become a great friend, and her husband Dave are great partners in what we're doing. She's a unique artist because she's a Christian artist, but she has her own thing going on. She has, a big personality and a big testimony and lots to say. And she has a serious patriotic conservative style. And so she comes to me and she says, I love doing Christian music. I'm going to continue to do that. But I just feel there's a niche for me in this market. We could write some patriotic songs, much like Lee Greenwood back in the day, with I'm Proud to Be an American. And so she wanted to do that song. And we wrote a bunch of other songs for her that were like, patriotic American songs. And it opened up a complete new genre for her that it was a space that nobody was in. And so all of a sudden, the doors kind of opened for her to do different types of events. Still very Christian and Christian content driven, but it was very patriotic. And then as we go deeper into that lane with her, her husband Dave calls me one day and says, all right, man, this is like 2023. There's these memes flying around all over, Instagram and everything. I think Trump won the election. I think Trump won. And he goes, we got to write a song called Trump Won. And I go,
oh my gosh.
Exactly. So no matter what you think about the situation, the topic is polarizing, right? I get that.
Yeah.
But as a creative songwriter, I'm like, okay, challenge accepted, right? So we wrote this really fun song called Trump Won. We released it quickly. This goes back to the topic I was talking about, how you could release a song after writing it in 3 days. So this is what happened with that song. No matter how you feel about the content or the song or what your policies are or what your politics are, this is what happened. We wrote the song quickly, tracked it, we released it on a Tuesday, and by Friday, it was the number one song in the country. When I say number one song on across the charts on iTunes, number one, every genre, pop, country, everything. Hilarious, right? So,
That is.
and the way that happened was, I say we have the same keys in our pocket as a lot of the labels, because a lot of the stuff now is finding your niche and allowing the viral situation to take control, right? So what happened with that song, we just put it in the right vein, put it in the right scenario, and then President Trump actually reposted that song, and it was like overnight, boom. So, that opened up a brand new lane for her. And so she's busy now doing all kinds of things she never thought she'd be doing, all because, they were crazy enough to go down that road. So I'll let you edit that how you want.
What do you think the total of all the streams on that thing is now?
One of the things I learned from that, and subsequently some other songs that we've done in that genre for her, again, some of them polarizing. You can look them up. They're absolutely hilarious and fun. We're not always calculating success by chart position and or monetary success, because we live in an era where we're calculating 2-3 billion impressions, not hundreds of millions. I mean, billions of impressions across, Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all these things. I mean, these snippets of these songs are going everywhere. And the marketing platform for that was almost bigger for her than having a number one sales song, or a radio charted song.
Right. And you guys had control of it all.
100%. There's no label,
nothing.
everything. And so now for her, it's great, because if there's a hot topic or a hot button that needs to be talked about or she wants to talk about, well, she has a platform to do it, and she can speak her mind on it. Again, however you feel about any topic, you can write the other song if you want.
That brings me to one of my favorite things I've done with you, because, like I said, having spent my childhood in Calcutta, when you came to me and said, I'm doing some Indian music, I was like, oh, okay, I love that. And so I started mixing sounds that I hadn't heard or had ever in my mix sessions, sitars and tablas, and then people singing in Hindi.
Right.
Amazing. So tell me about Nations of Worship. How'd that come about, and what are you doing with it?
So for as long as I can remember, I've had a heart for the nations. The word nations exists in the Bible from the beginning all the way to the end of Revelation. And so the nations are not going to go away, right? And so God has a special purpose and a special desire to see nations thrive in their own identity. And so early on, I definitely had a draw to the country of India. I've been going to India for about 15 years, just meeting different people and different worship leaders and artists and trying to figure out what their needs are. Only about 3 years ago did I actually put a name to my efforts there, called it Nations of Worship. And the whole idea was to help resource worship leaders and artists to write, record, and produce and release songs in their own languages. Because for so many years, I would go over there and see all these worship leaders and these artists just doing, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they were doing covers of existing songs and they would sing them in English, right? And there was some stuff that was coming out loosely translated in their different languages. But India is a crazy country, because you can go, we're in Tennessee right now, but you could go from Tennessee to Kentucky, and they speak a different language in Kentucky. And I guess you could say they speak a different language in Kentucky anyway, but yeah, we're in Hyderabad, and like they're speaking Telugu, and an hour away and they speak Malayalam or Tamil or something. So
and like population groups that are, nation sizes.
Nation sizes. Cities of 20 million people that you've never heard of. If you were to go on YouTube, YouTube is the number one distribution platform in India. It's a population of 1.8 billion people, and I think there's probably 1.9 billion cell phone subscriptions. Right. So, that is the way people digest content. And so, our Spotify numbers, I don't even really look at, because the reality is the people you're trying to reach with the message of Jesus are on YouTube. And so I love releasing these songs and then looking at the messages, because they're filled with testimonies from Pakistan and different countries you'd never be able to get into without the weapon of music. So I find that super interesting. But the Nations of Worship thing has been great. I mean, we've worked with over 100 different worship leaders and artists and musicians in India right now. You've mixed all these songs, Ainsley. You've mixed Sataraja. One of our first songs we ever did was a Phil Wickham song, Living Hope, in Hindi. And you mixed that right after we partnered with some friends of ours, Mark and Melissa Bourgeois, who have come alongside to help this Nations of Worship thing happen. I remember saying to them, it's the middle of COVID. I feel like my hands are tied. I'm bummed out, man. I want to get this thing rolling. I had a version I had done of Living Hope in Hindi. And my friend Alan in India, we were like, let's just do it. And so I started going to India in the middle of COVID, 2020. I was the only guy on that plane. I think the hotels in Hyderabad were like $40 a night. There was like nobody there. And we just got the team together and started producing these videos. And so I go watch them. They're really fun. Nations of Worship on YouTube. And you can just go through the whole process and see all these songs. And it's so awesome to watch these worship leaders who, they're so talented, so many great writers and worship leaders who deserve platforms to get their message out.
Well, one of the things I love about this is I put like 50% Bollywood and like 50% Western worship and put them in a blender, and they are having their own cultural identity
100%.
in the worship. It's not just this Western implant. The Psalms are the Psalms, right? It doesn't matter what language it's in. It's the same kind of worship content, but with the stuff they own, the stuff they feel, what they grew up with.
And so what I learned early on with that was our first foray into this was doing cover songs, but in their languages. So we touched Hindi, Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil, Urdu, which was fantastic, a couple others. But what we learned quickly was we set the bar of what the song should be like. But the next phase of that was we started to do songwriting camps where we would invite people in and we would just write for a couple days. And then we would just find these stunning gems. Like Sataraja is like one of my favorite songs. And I look at the numbers of that on YouTube, and it's not about the numbers, but it's a good, variable to look at go. That's actually impacting.
That's the one that connected the best.
Well, yeah.
Is that's our biggest.
That's our biggest one now. And then
yeah.
You look back and you go, there's all these songs.
Working with the songwriting in languages he doesn't speak, and he is suggesting things in words that he has no idea what he's saying.
I remember, oh my goodness, being in Mumbai in a studio with my friend Prince Mullah, and he's singing a song in I think it was in Hindi, and I immediately, I got on the talkback and I said, no, and I sang it back to him, and he looked at me like, how do you know that? What in the world? And I was like, I took a YouTube Hindi class last night. I figured it out. No, but it's funny how the same musical concepts apply in any language. They apply to almost all musical styles. So, if you can do it in one language, you can do it in all of them. Obviously, India is a big focus, but we're talking about nations. And so we just recently did a trip to South Africa, Mbombela, Nelspruit, where we invited about 20 worship leaders to come and write there. And that was the first time I've ever written songs in tongues like Swati and Zulu, which are click languages. And I had no idea what I was getting into. So I actually wrote a song with a couple pastors in Swati, and they started getting into this chorus section that had the clicks, and I'm like, man, I have no idea what's happening right now. So I just kept playing along and trying to sing. And then it dawned on me what I think I'm going to do to you, Ainsley.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a click track and label it lead vocal and ask you to tune it.
That'll be fun. You've got ideas of doing this in other cultures and other countries.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The first time you heard something like one of your songs on radio, do you remember that?
Oh, I do. But this was way back in the day.
But
way back in the day when I did my first solo record, I had a song. Oh, goodness me, I can't even remember the title of it. I can't even remember it. It was my first single off my first Ian Eskelin record, and I remember being in Nashville for one of the first times, and Way FM, which was still existed back then. They played my song on the radio, and I thought it was like, what just happened? That's the coolest thing ever. And then. You'd get maybe one or two chances off any album you did to maybe be the radio single. That's good memories, but that feeling never gets old. So I remember, for a long time in this town, I was known as the up-tempo, short radio song guy. So we got to have a radio type single that's under 3 minutes. Go talk to Ian. See what you can get, right? And so that turned into songs like God Is on the Move.
God Is on the Move.
Big 7 Time Down song, and which you mixed. A song called Just Say Jesus. But if you look at those songs, I mean, we're in the chorus by 30 seconds.
Yes.
Right? And so
love it.
It became almost a challenge for me to write these songs that were, under 3 minutes and in the chorus by 30 seconds.
What would be plan B or another career if the music business never came up?
So my mother's British, right? So I grew up playing soccer in the 80s, and I laugh and say that music crushed my soccer career. Because I remember getting, a small little record deal scenario. I didn't play my senior year of college, and everybody was shocked because, I was playing soccer at a college, and next thing I know, I'm like moonlighting, playing keyboards on the weekends and making songs. So
amazing.
Yeah.
I think that might be the headline of the YouTube video.
What's that?
Music crushed my soccer career.
That's perfect. I love it. There was this group of guys that we would always record demos with, and all these guys are like top-notch session players. Guys like Mike Payne, who I still work with, keyboard player Tim Lauer, bass player Tony Lucido, drummer Ben Phillips. But he had a studio back in the day that we would all go to, and we would just record our demos, and we would record masters and do all kinds of things. And those guys would always laugh at me because I would show up with a group of songs, and they knew right away that they would probably be up-tempo. They knew no matter what the tempo, no matter what the arrangement was, that the song was most likely going to come in at 2 minutes and 58 seconds. And if it did, that would probably be the radio song. And so sure enough, man, I remember these looks at Ben. He'd be working Pro Tools, and he'd look back at me and go, I don't know how you did that. It's like 10 beats faster than the last song, and it's still 2:58 into the chorus by 30 seconds. So that became another fun challenge.
One of the other things that I'm doing with this podcast is kind of a therapeutic thing, like struggles that you may have had and how you overcame.
I think one of the big struggles of being in music and any kind of genre, but especially in Christian music, it's like you're constantly wrestling with a calling from God. And, I'm doing this for ministry, but there's a business side of it. I've got to make it work. I mean, I've got bills to pay. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you'll hear this across all your podcasts. Everybody deals with it. Some people are fortunate to write a big, massive worship song, and it's blessed and anointed, and God had that plan for them, and it changed their whole financial situation. That wasn't me. I joke about writing fireworks at noon. I write these pop songs that like blow up real quick, and then I'm thrilled to be a part of them, and I love where God's got me. One of the greatest things I have learned is that you live on God's economy, not your own economy. And it really has forced me to understand what true faith is. And that was a game changer for me when I actually started to take that seriously back in the day. I am living proof that God is completely faithful. And I look back, I'm so grateful that I came up the way I did in the industry. God has been one step ahead of me the entire way. No matter what you do in music, your history is going to be littered with failure. Mm-hmm. I have way more failures than I do successes. You got to live through those failures, and you got to live through the faith part to have God take you to another level. And so my wife and I pray about this all the time, and every single day, actually. And I'm super grateful for whatever God has for me next. And I get to get up every day and make music and hopefully honor him with everything that I do.
Yeah. Excellent. And I think the point you mentioned about failures, that's something I'm learning is like he who never made a failure never made anything. Mm-hmm. And failures are where you learn how to be better.
Right. I joke now in production that don't worry, guys, I got this covered. I know exactly what not to do. Right.
That's perfect. Well, I think that is it. Thanks, mate.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed working with you. Always do a handshake at the end.
All right, boss. I thought we had to do the cowbell at the end.
I just do the cowbell at the beginning, but if you want to make it an end thing too, that's it, folks.
Well, if you've made it this far, you enjoy More Cowbell Please, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode with Ian Eskelin. Please hit the subscribe button. That's the thing I need the most right now, if you can. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. So do that. Now, next week, we have Luke Smallbone from For King and Country. You're going to love this. This is actually quite hilarious. He says some great stuff that you're not going to want to miss. Little buried nuggets in that episode that he has actually never shared before. Until then, may everything you hear be fantastic and may your mixes be hot.